Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our Leading Edge virtual workshop on effective communication during uncertain times. My name is Colleen Skipsey, and I am the program manager here at the Chamber. And we are so excited to welcome Zoe Carmichael back. She's a great presenter and a great friend of the Chamber. Without further ado, I just want to send a quick thank you over to our Leadership Development Mission Lead sponsor, which is Fifth Third Bank. They're a great partner of the Chamber and able to help provide this program to our members at no charge. So I'd like to introduce Scott Lovers with Fifth Third Bank just to share a couple of remarks. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Colleen. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Thanks to everyone for joining and the chance to sponsor this morning. It's nice to see you all engage in this conversation. Very relevant, of course, leadership anytime. Communication, of course, more unique and different in these times. So Fifth Third is a proud sponsor of the Chamber, of course, and we have been partnering with the Chamber for a long time. We've been in the community of Holland for about 115 years. And I've said this to many people, but 2020 was a year like no other. I think we had a lot of lessons learned, and some of the silver lining is what we're focusing on while leading through. Some of the examples of 2020 for us, PPP gets a lot of publicity, right? But we're proud of that. We provided $5.4 billion in PPP funding that protected 605,000 jobs last year. 50,000 of those jobs were in West Michigan. That's just for round one. We're kind of back at it right now. So that's good. It's good for our customers. That's one way we leaned in. Philanthropic support throughout the year remained a top priority, even though it would have been easy to back off. We leaned in with volunteerism and with dollars to support key organizations like the Chamber that really came around our customers and around our community to push forward. But just more than that, I'm proud of our team for how we communicated throughout the year. We had specific efforts to be proactive and communicate more frequently with our customer base. And so when I reflect on the year, we talk about this a lot internally, but we're not here to just simply provide financial services, but really our mission is to strengthen families and build a stronger community. And then all the products and everything else kind of just flow out of that. So we're grateful for the year, grateful it's done, grateful for the lessons learned as we're still really in the pandemic. From a Chamber perspective to the Chamber team, the award-winning Chamber team, I know your world continues to change daily, and so we at Fifth Third thank you for adapting and delivering such valuable resources to the community. We notice your leadership and appreciate it. And on the topic of leadership, I just a quick note on this. I have the chance to get together a couple times a month with some friends and other business leaders, and we talk about a lot of things, but I just thought I would share two quick principles that continue to rise at the top of our list in these discussions. It applies to 2020 and forever. But number one, a good leader defines reality, which was tough sometimes last year, but defining reality. And number two, a leader keeps relationships bigger than the problem or issue. There are many days we could have folded, but we all lean in, we persevere, we keep those relationships bigger than the issue. So I try to do those things well. I don't do them perfectly, but look forward to continuing my leadership journey here by learning from Zoe today, and I just appreciate the chance to serve alongside the Chamber in this great community. So thank you, Colleen.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you all for everything that you do for the community, the Chamber, our members, and we're looking forward to a great year ahead in 2021. So
Got it.
Thank
Good.
you. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Zoe Carmichael, and she is going to lead us through a conversation today about effective communication, and she is quite the pro at this. So welcome back, Zoe. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm excited to bring this information to all of you. Colleen, can you see my screen?
I can.
And you can hear me?
Yes.
Fabulous. Well, first of all, I'm excited to be back here at the Chamber, being part of the Leading Edge workshops. This is such a timely topic, and I want to really say a big thank you to Scott Lovers for that wonderful intro, because I couldn't agree more during these uncertain times. Leadership starts with defining reality and keeping relationships number one. So thank you for that wonderful lead into my topic, because those are some things I'm going to talk about today. So today is all about effective communication for uncertain times. And I think this is going to be a topic that's going to be relevant for a really long time. So I'm thrilled to be here to present it to you. There was a handout that was attached to the invite. I'm going to follow along with that handout. If you have it in front of you, great. If not, no problem. The slides do follow along. But I really encourage you to take these attitudes and habits and recommendations with you back home to your families, friends, and of course your workplaces, because I think you're going to find a lot that we can definitely relate to for sure. So I want to go ahead, and I'm going to minimize my screen here for a minute. And so there is no doubt that our current circumstances are definitely challenging. Everything from physical distancing, remote working, and a lack of certainty about the future is something that I know that we all have a very profound impact on how we live and we work and we communicate. And we all need to learn new ways to be efficient, right, at working from home, managing our time, and reaching others from a distance. My name, of course, Zoe Carmichael. You see that up there on your screen. I am a teacher, trainer, facilitator, and speaker coach. And that is how I became acquainted with the West Coast Chamber, was through my speech coaching, through TEDx Macatawa. Was a great experience many years ago. And I am also a professor of communication at Kendall College of Art and Design in Grand Rapids. I'm a teacher there, and we of course are all virtual, so I'm getting really used to this. And I also want to point that I am a mother of twin teenage girls, and they are upstairs right now having a virtual school. So we're quite used to learning how to communicate from a distance. And sometimes that's the distance from my basement to upstairs. So communicating is really evolving. So I want to say that in this training session, we're going to learn the types of strategies, attitudes, and habits that we could all take away from this COVID-19 experience to make us better employees, better communicators, and of course, stronger people. And this training goes quickly because communication goes quickly, right? First impressions happen fast. And so learning how we treat others with empathy is something we're going to talk about today, and how to really take care of ourselves are some really important things I want to definitely point out for us. So if you have your handout in front of you, I'm still on page 1, but I want to point out that these are our learning objectives for today. We're going to study the 7 C's of communication, and we're going to discuss the interpersonal communication and remote work and learning and what that looks like. Understanding the importance of self-care in this age of quarantine. You're going to leave here with some tips on how to take care of ourselves so we can take care of others. Talking a little bit about increasing our listening skills with greater self-awareness. I think with distance learning, listening has become a really important part of this uncertain time, and especially with remote working. And then finally, practicing optimism, right? To create a productive workplace environment. How do we stay productive and be optimistic? I know it can be challenging. So let's dive right in. So on your screen, it's true. Our coworkers, families, communities, we're all learning to adjust, right, to the new rules of engagement all at the same time. For example, my husband had to upgrade our internet because we have 4 people all Zooming, all day, every day. So we've had to learn to adjust. But there will be conflict, right? Learning how to properly and professionally address disagreements are really the key to ensuring successful outcomes. And how do you handle conflict when you can't see the other person, or you're separated from them? Because navigating this new world can really feel like a moving target, right? Every day the news is telling us something different. So let's begin with a few reminders about positive communication. So what is communication? Of course, it's exchanging messages back and forth, but what are 3 principles of communication? And I think we're really being challenged with these right now. So I want to go through these. Communication is inevitable. You cannot not communicate. right? We're always sending and receiving messages. The way we hold our head, our eye contact, our body language, you're always sending and receiving messages. Number two, communication is irreversible. Once a message has been communicated, the sender cannot take it back. And how many of you have sent a text and thought, oh, I shouldn't have done that? Or maybe hit reply all on an email and think, oh, I didn't mean to do that, right? And it's frustrating because it's hard to take it back. But here's the good news. Number three, communication is an ever-changing process. So there's always an opportunity to go back and hopefully make some adjustments. So that's a really quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. I know I'm talking quickly. Your time is precious, and so I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A at the end. So we are on page 2 now of the handout. So our first objective that I just mentioned, the 7 C's of effective communication. Now, as I mentioned, we're always sending and receiving messages, right? That doesn't mean it's effective. So here's some things to keep in mind. On your screen, you'll see a graph of several different bubbles there. And think of this as a checklist. And again, you have this in your handout if you want to refer to this later. But professional communication skills, all right, are going to increase the chance that our message will be understood in the way it was intended, right? We don't always have the outcomes we expect. So here's some things you need to keep in mind for effective communication. Number one, you want to be correct, right? You want to make sure that your information is accurate. I'm going around the circle. You want to be complete, right? Have a complete message so you don't leave people hanging. Try to be as concrete as you can, especially with expectations. Leaders, you want to be sure that when you send a message or you leave a call, that people have clear takeaways so they know exactly what is needed. So being concrete, being concise. We are so distracted right now with messages hitting us all the time, right? Zoom call, Zoom call, Zoom call, that you want to be short and concise with your information. Be considerate, all right? Think of diversity and inclusion when you are sending your messages in your team, being considerate of others and their needs, especially now, right during this quarantine time. We don't know what other people are going through. So set aside your assumptions and try to be considerate. Courteous, always being polite, and of course, always being clear are really important pieces. So if you have your handout there, in this new world of virtual learning, what would you say is the most difficult for you? Is it being complete? Is it trying to be concrete, concise? Sometimes long-winded emails kind of get lost in the fray. Trying to be considerate when everybody has so many things coming at once. Being courteous and clear and correct. These are just some things that you might want to take with you and really consider your communication style and are you being effective? Because interpersonal communication is really challenged now, especially during remote work environments. I love being in person. The last time I was at the chamber, I was in person and I love that personal exchange, that face-to-face. And now with video conferencing, it's a really different challenge. And this is really expecting us to learn a new way of communicating. It's very new. We're still learning. New technology is always coming out. And frankly, working from home really is a brand new concept for many people. I'm used to being in front of a classroom. Now I'm in my basement, right? So navigating time management and distractions can be really, really difficult. And we're getting the hang of it, but it is taking some time. So always remember that interpersonal communication when it comes to remote work, okay? So I want to define interpersonal communication in a broader sense. I'm on page 3 of the handout agenda. So what exactly is intercommunication? Interpersonal communication, stepping back, it's a process by which people exchange information, feelings, and meaning through verbal and nonverbal messages. Bottom line, it's face-to-face communication. Now, understanding the nature of human communication is one of the first steps in learning how to successfully and positively deal with others. And that's a challenge, right? Especially if you can't see people face-to-face. So, question to think about. How do we ensure honest communication from a distance, It goes back to being complete and concise and courteous, thinking of the person on the other end. We're going to be talking about empathy here in a few minutes, but I really want that to sink in. Honest communication. We have different layers of expectations now, don't we? Which means interpersonal communication is going to take even more effort than maybe what we're used to. And trust me, with teenage girls, this has really been a challenge for our family. So that means you've really got to pay attention to our body language. What is seen in that small screen? Something I've had to get used to also is that some people are Zooming from their phones, right? Some people have laptops. Some people have 2 screens at their desk. Some people don't. So if all they see is your face, what's happening with our face when you're in a distance call, right? So much of our face-to-face communication is through our body language, because while we deliver a message through our words, we're also emphasizing, confirming, and I want to point this out, even negating what we say through our tone of voice and our body language. Now, we can say that we're happy to see someone, but if your face doesn't confirm that, you could be sending a very different message, right? So being aware of your expressions is really, really important. Are you confirming, emphasizing, or negating, contradicting your message simply by the way you hold your expressions? Nonverbal messages can sometimes be way more important than the words that we say. The way that we stand, what we do with our hands, the sound of our voice, the way we walk into a room and get on a call and get off a call, if it's a remote call, can enhance and contradict. So be aware. So I love this slide. So thinking about these uncertain times, right? Sometimes it can be hard to smile when there's so much going on, right? Smiles are always welcome. And smiles will help us to relax, right? Are you the little yellow smiley face in that sea of sad faces? When we are tense, our smiles can also look like grimaces, right? So practice smiling in a mirror. If you don't feel comfortable smiling into a blank screen, practice with a mirror. I want to tell you right now, I have a mirror right next to my computer. Many years ago, I had some telephone training, and they forced us to keep a mirror next to our computer so we could see what we looked like when we were on the phone. So customers can hear a smile even through the phone. So your face should try to look pleasant. Even if they can't see you, smiling has a huge impact. Eye contact, can't say enough about that, right? If you're staring down, remember, people are only seeing the top of your head. So be aware of the camera and where you are. Because once you lose that eye contact, right, people will miss what you're saying. So be careful not to stare. Any Parks and Rec fans out there? Ron Swanson, right? His face pretty much always looks the same, right? Look at the people in the eye, but try not to stare. Are you constantly checking your watch or looking at your phone? And here's the key. What if we can't see your face because we're wearing a mask, right? We all have been into the store, or we've been into the bank, or we've been different places where having a mask, you can't see the faces like we used to all the time. So that means the eye contact really has to be deliberate and purposeful, okay? So smiling and eye contact during these uncertain times will help people feel comfortable. Body movement. Are you leaning into the call, or are you turning your body away? Right? Oprah is a very welcoming force. Are you a welcoming force, right? Show the people with your body language that you're happy to see them. I know we can't always hug right now because of COVID, but extending your arm like this really can make a huge difference in helping people feel welcome. Even if we're incredibly busy, our body language should show that we're interested and focused on this conversation at this time, right? This time. So be welcoming, confident, comfortable, even if you don't feel comfortable. If we're incredibly busy, our body language should show that we're focused. Leaning into that conversation, avoiding the distractions, will convey those positive messages. If you have a cat that walks across the screen, or if someone's baby is crying in the other room, right? Try to focus on the person in front of you, but also be understanding and kind, right, during these uncertain times. I think it's just really exciting material because it's affecting all of us differently, but at the same time. On your screen here is a quote from a friend of mine from Grand Rapids Community College in Grand Rapids. I've done a lot of training for them over the years as well. And she let me borrow this quote. And I think it really speaks a lot to what we're feeling right now. This is top of page 4 of your handout. It's also on the screen. For me, work and home were 2 separate worlds, and I could easily transition between them at the beginning and the end of each day. Now they've melded together, and I'm going back and forth between them within minutes, and even on evenings and weekends and days off. Before the pandemic, home was my safe place, and no work was allowed. Work happened at work, but no more. And I think you're going to find that that separation between work and home gets really blended, right? Especially if you are working from home or have a different schedule, or you're working with people that are half in the office or half at home. It can be really challenging just to turn off the work, me included. I'm always working. I was always working before, but now I'm never leaving my basement, right? And so you really have to make sure that separation is there, just for your own mental well-being and those around you. So if you can relate to this quote, I know that you're not alone. So here are some tips, okay? These are some tips that you can use to improve your productivity while working from home. I really encourage you to share these. Wake up early. I know that's hard, and it's difficult to always, get yourself out of bed when you just have to walk downstairs or walk across the hall to your office, right? But it's a great way to start your day, to kick it off and just have that purpose in the morning. Change to a work-ready attire. In the beginning, we were wearing sweatpants, right? Because nobody could see us anyway. We wanted to dress for comfort, right? But if you can get up and put on your suit or your tie or your jacket or put on a nice pair of earrings or something, it really does change your attitude, and it gets you ready for work. I have a couple of jackets here behind the curtain that I always have ready to put on, right? Because putting that mindset will help you to be productive. Taking regular breaks, really important. I find that if I don't just get up and get a drink of water, I'm sitting all day long. So being productive, you gotta exercise a little bit. Find a workspace. Find a place where you can have your private area. I know that can be challenging depending on where you are, but having a space that is work ready. And then finally, have regular check-ins with colleagues, friends, family, and check on those that haven't checked in with you for a while. See how they're doing. So I'm hoping that you can jot these down and keep those in mind. Because here's the thing, I've mentioned this a couple times, another objective for today. Understanding the importance of self-care in the age of quarantine. Taking care of ourselves. That might mean taking a long walk, right, in the morning or in the evening or after dinner. Reading a book, right, getting outside of your regular workday and having some private time. Life is different now. Life is different as we continue to learn more about COVID-19 and as stay-at-home orders are lifted and shifted, right? And now that vaccines are being rolled out, that's a whole new level of stress and uncertainty. Do I get the vaccine? Do I not get the vaccine, right? Did my mom get the vaccine? Is grandpa going to get it? And so staying home is a whole new level of self-care, and it can be really, really challenging. So concerns to most people can often go from fear to uncertainty about physical health and our loved ones. And on the screen here, I have the future is highlighted, right? Because we don't know what our jobs are going to look like, or maybe, the economy is really affecting, your loved ones and your income. So the question is, when will life be normal? Well, and this topic is a really hot topic right now, because if you can take these tips, pay attention to others, take care of yourself, the future will happen, and you can plan the best that you can, but we didn't see this coming, right? And we will make it through. But some of the questions that we might still face are, will I be able to go to a concert or a family party or a clothing store or a religious service safely, right? A lot of those things are happening now, but do we feel safe doing those things? Should I attend my son's soccer game? Can I go to a large gathering without fear? And you're probably, a lot of you are thinking, yeah, these are real questions. And that's that third bullet. All of these questions and uncertainty of when will life be normal requires an empathetic mindset. I've had that highlighted because future and empathy have got to go together. As we learn how to navigate this new and this shifting world, we've got to think outside ourselves, right? How is the other person feeling? How can I make their job and their life maybe a little bit easier with my attitude? And trust me, empathy is contagious. Put yourself in their shoes. How are they feeling? Are they scared? Are they uncertain? That means going back to them and checking on them, calling them, saying, Sue, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? How's your mom? Right? Those kinds of empathy actions will help the future be a little less scary. We all need to be a little extra kind in understanding while managing our own fear and anxiety. Now, I have this slide up, so I want to talk about this for a minute. There's fear and there's anxiety. They're not the same thing. Fear is response to a threat, here and now. You see a mouse in your path, that's an immediate threat. Anxiety is a future-focused fear. What if I see a mouse, right? And I think we're challenged with these, is it the fear of going outside or is it the anxiety of going outside? And so if we can learn to manage the fear, what's real, and the anxiety, the fear of what could happen, managing those are really going to be a challenge, because here's the thing. Anxiety and depression are real. It's on page 5 of your handout. According to the latest Blue Cross Blue Shield Health Index, of the top 10 health conditions, aside from COVID, of course, among millennials, for example, 6 of those are behavioral health related. One of those leading health problems is major depression. College students separated from parents, right? And that's up just from 2014 to 2017. I mean, I can't imagine if we had to do this study again in 2021, what that would look like. So how do you recognize depression, especially during these uncertain times? Depression is a state of mental health. It's characterized by low mood and aversion to activity, just don't want to do anything. It's not just all in your head. If someone says they're depressed, take it seriously, okay? Help them find help, help them seek assistance. It's real, and it's a serious illness caused by changes in the brain chemistry. Why is depression on the rise? Some say it could be our digital media to blame. Competition from Facebook and Instagram and social media and the fancy masks and, am I going outside? Should I be staying home? What should I be doing? So much of these messages can create that anxiety, right? That future fear, okay? So being aware of those messages that are being constantly thrown at us, taking care of yourself and others. More research is needed, but there's more isolation now because people are stuck at home. And because more people are isolated, they're not eating well, they're sleep deprived, lack of exercise. All of those pieces can contribute to that anxiety and depression. So in uncertain times, how can we help our colleagues and team members help each other during these uncertain times? Here's some very important key takeaways I want you to remember. Reinforce those positive relationships through validation and asking questions. If someone is scared or fearful, acknowledge it, okay? Reinforce those relationships, validate those feelings. They're real. Asking questions, feelings you might have are real. Building empathy, listening to understand, not just waiting to speak. And I'm going to talk about listening here in just a minute. But empathy is the ability to understand and appreciate the feelings of others. Building the empathy, learning how to emotionally read the other person. And that's hard to do when you can only see this much, right? But try to learn how to read the eye contact, especially if you can't see the rest of their face. But being aware, if you have to ask somebody to repeat the question, ask them to repeat the question. That tells them that you're listening and that you're paying attention. The more you ask, the more you reinforce, the more that person feels heard, and the more that person feels seen. And increasing our understanding of ourselves and others. Don't just wait to talk, but listen with greater self-awareness. That's a really important piece. This is top of page 6 of your handout. How do you be a better listener? Be aware of your own tendencies. I'm a talker. I love to talk. I have to force myself to listen and not just jump in. That's something I struggle with sometimes too. But being aware of your listening skills will help you be a much better communicator and a calmer person, okay? So active listening, you may hear active listening and passive listening and what those means. Active listening is an attitude. It's listening with an attitude to understand, okay? And when you're talking over each other on a Zoom call, it can be super frustrating, right? So if you can sit back and listen, then you can create a responsible response, okay? Shared understanding includes responding to physical indicators, verbal cues, along with asking questions, as I said, paraphrasing, summarizing those statements. And you can simply say, so what I hear you say is, or help me understand this. Summarizing those statements shows the other person, demonstrates that you're paying attention, okay? I know this is exciting stuff and it's a lot to think about. And again, you can apply this as soon as we end this call. So I'm going to continue to wrap this up here pretty shortly. So what does it mean to be self-aware? We know people that are pretty aware of themselves. They can read the room, right? They know when to speak, when not to speak. So really, self-awareness is a perception of your own personality and your own attitudes and how your actions affect others. If we walk into a store, for example, Target, my favorite getaway place, if there's a large crowd, I will be aware that maybe I should, back up a little bit, right? Being aware of how my actions might affect others, okay? That means that you're being self-aware, you're showing that empathy, right? The way others can see us can be quite different from what we think they see. We may think we're a good listener, right? But do they perceive us that way? So make the effort to be a good listener, self-aware, step back, and practice that optimism. Compassion will create a joyful and productive workplace environment, even remotely. Practicing that positive attitude takes self-care, takes effort. So we are on page 7. Pretty excited about this last piece, this last objective for today. Emotional wellness. What does that mean? Emotional wellness inspires self-care, getting up early, getting dressed, taking that break, right? It reduces stress, the development of our inner strength. It's also very important to be attentive to both positive and negative feelings so we can be able to help and understand others how to handle those emotions. So on your sheet, why is it important? Well, emotional wellness will get us through these uncertain times. Is it easy? No. Does it take effort? Absolutely. And that's why we're here sharing this information. Because if we can look at this together, we can help ourselves and others. Emotional wellness allows you to accept how you're feeling. If you're feeling anxious, tell someone, I'm worried about going to the doctor's appointment. I'm worried about my kids going back to school in person. I'm worried about going to the grocery store. Sharing your fears are going to help you overcome those fears and address them. Once you accept your feelings, you can begin to understand why you're feeling that way. talking about it. If you don't have someone to talk to, find a friend or ask maybe a coworker or someone that you can share that with, because getting it off your chest will build that emotional wellness. And then you can decide how you want to act in response to those feelings. When this whole pandemic started, I didn't leave my house. I didn't want to leave my house. I was anxious and fearful. I didn't have the information. My emotional wellness took clear effort to get to the point where I can leave now and not be as scared. And more information will help with that. And finally, the route to emotional wellness, feeling sad before, and then how do you feel happy after? In order to begin that route to emotional wellness, you must remember to be optimistic. Optimism allows you to greet your emotions, both positive and negative, with that confident attitude that allows you to learn from those experiences. How do you learn from your experiences? By addressing them, admitting them, and then taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. So at the bottom of page 7, here are some strategies to boost your emotional awareness. Remind yourself to stay positive. I surround myself with lots of little optimistic things to keep me in a good mood. Reminding yourself to stay positive. Remember to smile, right? Keep that little mirror next to your phone if you have to. Seek help and support from others when needed. Employ gratitude to your life in order to strengthen relationships with friends and family. For example, I haven't seen my parents in a year, and that really bothers me. So I call my parents a lot. My parents are in Ohio. I'm in Grand Rapids. So I try to strengthen those relationships by checking in, texting or calling. And I'm thankful for those relationships. That gets me through. Practice being mindful, increasing that self-awareness, and then accepting mistakes, learn from them. We're all learning as we go. These uncertain times are affecting us all, right? But let's learn for next time and recognize them for what they are. They are learning experiences during these uncertain times. These are learning experiences. So we're almost done here. So moving on to page 8, I'd like to leave you with a couple of these tips, and then I'll turn it over to Colleen. So 3 tips to communicate with your employees if you are a manager or a leader. Adam Robinson co-founded Hierology with this mission, and I really like this idea for growing employees, especially right now. Communicate often and maintain transparency. Reiterate your core values. Encourage continuous improvement across your team. Encourage that improvement. Reiterate your core values. If you can pay attention to your people, reiterate your values, those people that you work with and work for will see that camaraderie and that teamwork. If you're in this together, say so. Reinforce those relationships. That was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but I do want to do a quick wrap up with a final takeaway. Today we talked about the objective of discussing the 7 C's of effective communication. We reviewed interpersonal communication and distance learning, the eye contact and the body language, and staying focused with this person at this moment, at this time. Understanding the importance of self-care in the age of quarantine, getting up early, finding a quiet place to work, taking regular breaks. Increasing listening skills with greater self-awareness. And then finally, practicing optimism to create that joyful and productive workplace environment, that emotional wellness, reaching out to others, strengthening those relationships. And I just like to say that the workplace environment in our home has evolved. Again, I have 2 14-year-old girls who like to lay on their bed and do their classes via Zoom on the computer. I would not call that a productive workplace environment, but they're comfortable and they're pretty emotionally stable right now. So I'm okay with that, right? And the emotional wellness is a really important piece. And learning to pick and choose what to focus on is going to be a really important place and a really important piece to building that emotional wellness during the uncertain times. So I'd like to leave you with this final screenshot. And this is a quote that I've used with a lot of training with my students at Kendall and also with my professional training. I do a lot of training with Davenport, and I love this slide because we're not perfect, right? Let's learn from the past. Let's set vivid, detailed goals for the future and live in the only moment of time over which you have any control over, and that's now. We can't control what happened in 2020. We can't change it, right? We can't go back. But what we can do is learn from the previous year, set vivid, detailed goals for now moving forward, and then live now. The Zoom call that you're on now, the meetings you have this afternoon, that's what you have control over during these uncertain times. I'm excited to see how I can grow as a mom, as a wife, as a trainer through these times, because I'm going to focus on what I can control, and that is this, and that's now. And with that, I would like to thank you so much for this opportunity to share this information, and I'd like to turn things over to Colleen for any questions or answers I can provide. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zoe. And I love that last quote too. It just is really timely and fitting to, we got to focus on the now, you know, we don't exactly know what's going to be in the future, but got to stay positive and focus on yourself. And I love the piece about the empathy as well. I think that's really important here. So we have received quite a few questions in the chat, and then I got some privately as well. So let's dive right into those. So the first one we have is, what is the perceived value of dressing for success on internal and external virtual meetings?
That is a really great question. As you can see, I have my pop of color here, right? You want to dress like you have a meeting. You want to present yourself that it is a purposeful and directed, goal-oriented meeting. I don't wear sweatpants in meetings because I don't feel like a professional focus in that way. So you don't have to wear a suit and tie, but I do believe that there's an expectation that if it's a work meeting, that you should be dressed for work.
Awesome. And so that applies for internal and external meetings.
I believe so. Yes. And it also has to go along with the culture of your group as well. I mean, if you're having a Friday happy hour Zoom call, well, that's a little different. So
yeah. I will say I am pregnant and I am still wearing sweatpants, but I think I have a little bit of a leeway with that because I am pregnant. But
I can only see here up.
Yes, you can only see from here up.
that is a good question, but yeah, it is also the culture of your organization as well.
Yeah. Great. The next question we have is, what kind of virtual remote communications do you see continuing after we go back to normal?
Sure. I do think that Zoom is going to continue, or a function of it. I joke with my kids, as I'm sure many of your parents do, where it's like, you know, bye-bye snow days, right? No such thing as snow days anymore. And I think people are anxious to get back in the office, but I also see virtual communications continuing as a backup, as an addition to face-to-face communication, but I do think we're going to get back face-to-face once that's acceptable. But I think this will always be part of it, part of the routine.
Awesome. Another question that I got privately chatted to me was, what are some ways to engage with teams that seem to be feeling the distance? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, regular check-ins is really important. Maybe like a private email. I would not address super personal questions in a team setting. I would reach out to them privately. And sometimes people don't feel comfortable, you know, seeing their face, or especially their environment. And so if there are people that have a hard time engaging, I would reach out to them privately and just say, hey, is there anything on your mind? Do you want to talk? Because we forget that people are ill, people have family members who are ill, people have children that are struggling, and that might just be something they need to talk about privately.
Right, definitely. I know our team is excited. This afternoon we're getting together to do a little virtual fun together, a little team building, because that is just so important right now, you know, when we're all still working remotely. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very much so, yes.
Another question that we have is, I'm curious if you have any recommendations on some authors or books to help strengthen communication skills.
Oh my gosh, I do. And it's funny that you should say that, because I have it right here in front of me. This book, it is called The Magic of Dialogue. I have used this book for gosh, like 15 years. And it is all about how to interact with empathy, setting aside assumptions, treating people equally. And it is transformative communication. It was written in 2001. You're gonna think, oh my gosh, that's 20 years old. It still holds true today. Workplace and home. It's one of my very favorite books, The Magic of Dialogue.
Awesome.
Love it.
I have to get that one added to my list.
And it's a great read. And then I have one other book that I really like. This is called Diverse Teams at Work. Diverse Teams at Work. It's by Garden Warts and Anita Rao. It's a really great book. It just talks about diverse teams and just facilitation, different attitudes. These, of course, were written pre-quarantine, pre-Zoom, so I don't know. But they're good reads.
Awesome. Another question we have is, tips for the transition to back to in-person working. Team members are going to be probably socially and emotionally exhausted. So do you have any tips for, once we go back into the swing of things again, on how to kind of engage as your team?
Yeah, I would say number one, patience. Number one is absolutely, you've got to have patience because, again, you don't know where people are coming from. Some people are excited to go back to the office. Some people don't want to go back to the office. And I would be, number one, I would be patient. And I would try, I know it's going to be challenging in a team environment, but I would challenge you to meet each person where they're at. And I've seen where half the office, is in person and half the office is remote. And I'm actually doing some training right now with some teams trying to figure that out. Bill's in the office and Sally's not in the office, and it can be really frustrating. But I ask that you give each other some grace and really be patient to try to work that out. Because if anything that Zoom or this virtual world has taught us is that we truly are nimble and that we can be flexible. So I'd be patient and I would be flexible. Those are my tips.
Awesome. Looks like we have one other question here. So
these are great questions. These are really good questions.
This one says, for those of us who live in the now with optimism, other than listening and acknowledging people's fears, do you have any other tips for dealing with those who have high anxiety and believe the 1 in a million bad things that will happen to them? How do you deal with someone that has that high anxiety?
Yeah, high anxiety, if you never had anxiety, you have it now, right? If you never thought it bothered you. High anxiety it goes back to my comment about the fear, which is the real immediate threat. There is a car coming at you. That's an immediate real thing. And then there's anxiety where it's like the fear of that happening someday to me, right? And really acknowledging that their fears and anxiety are real, not brushing it off, and never ever say, oh, just get over it, because that's not helpful and you're not acknowledging and respecting them. So if you've got someone with a really high anxiety, is letting them talk. Seriously, just let them get it off their chest, empathize and say, I have been there. That is really scary. That's got to be really hard. Let's talk about what that means. And I really do mean listen carefully. It goes back to the listening skills with that active listening. Give them as much time as they need to get through it. Because here's the thing. If you expect that person to be super productive at work without acknowledging that, it's not going to happen. So you have to acknowledge that, and that means talking. And if you are not the professional person, maybe give some references or some other outside resources for them to talk with, because they're going to be stuck. They're not going to get over it until they talk it out.
Sure.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. I think it goes back to, like you said, it's all about listening, making sure that we're there for people. Another question that we just got is recommendations for dealing with someone that is always negative and cynical.
That is real. That is a real thing. And that's another training, Colleen. We should talk about is dealing with difficult people. You're going to have the naysayers. And I've done training on difficult conversations, right? Difficult people, difficult conversations. if someone's always being cynical, it's okay to have them express themselves, but what you don't want is for them to detract and derail the conversation or to get the meeting off on a tangent. Again, it's something you may have to address offline, especially if it is a major roadblock for productivity, because naysayers can sometimes attract naysayers. And especially now, we don't have time to do that. So I would try to close it down or talk to them offline and say, you know, I understand that you're fearful and that you're negative, but we really need you to, you know, bring your A game and focus on the team right now. And that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up about all the questions we have. So just to kind of end it on a high note, and I'm curious too, Zoe, what's one word that you are hoping that this year, 2021, will be? Just one word to summarize what you're hoping for.
Well, I think resilience.
Okay.
That just popped in my head because it's everything I talked about today, folks. I myself am trying to practice, and that includes resilience.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all of the great tips and takeaways that you've provided us today. I know I've learned a lot and excited to share this with the team. And it's always great to have you back here with us, even if it is in a virtual setting. Just a quick thank you again to Fifth Third Bank and all of our other leadership development mission sponsors for the support of today's program. Thank you again to everyone for joining us, and make it a remarkable day.